Welcome to Dice and Mind, a podcast hosted by Brad Brown and Jason Kaufman to explore the intersection of life, games, science, music, philosophy, and creativity through interviews with leading creatives. All are welcome in this space.
So this is part two of us daydreaming
In the solar
in the
system.
solar system.
Yeah.
And this is I say this, and I say this in a very positive way. You know, just if you would have told us, if you would have told either of us a couple months back that we'd be daydreaming in the solar system, we would have wondered what you were talking about. And this little
Would
book,
you?
yeah, well,
Yeah,
you know, yeah, I guess not. But
yeah, maybe
in
not.
the context, in this context,
Yes.
um, but this little book has taken us both by storm. And I mean,
Yeah.
little book, I say that
Because it's a slim, beautifully printed
in
volume.
in
Yeah.
the in the in the most in the fondest context. Um, just because it's a powerful little tome. Um,
It's such a good book. It's such a good read.
you know, so from my perspective, um, and I say this is, we rib each other good constantly, but there is hardly, it's funny, we both live in, even though you teach leadership and your background is psychology, I'm in business and tech, but there is hardly, you're very, um you don't recommend books to me unless you think it will,
Yeah.
um,
Or vice versa.
yeah, unless you think it will, because we live in different arenas, it might show, I might have some interest. You're not going to recommend to me a behavioralism book because it probably won't necessarily, because of my background, um, be of interest to me. Although maybe not the best example, because there's some behavioral stuff that I will find interesting. But
Yes, you
when
will.
so literally whenever you recommend, point of being is whenever you recommend a book, from my perspective, there really has never been, that I could ever think of, been a case going back to the Tao of physics.
Oh my God.
Uh, yeah, back in the
Yeah.
90s,
Well, thank you. Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
um, or the Tao Te Ching or the
Yep.
I Ching,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
where I haven't just said, okay, I'm going to read it. Um, you know, where I haven't done it. And you struck gold again with this one.
Well, again, it's such a good book. So to clarify, if you're just tuning in, and
Mhm.
or if you didn't listen to the previous episode, we're talking about Daydreaming in the Universe. This is by Moores and Rogerson. Now, we had Professor John Moores on last episode, one of the two authors, and this episode we have Professor Jesse Rogerson. And honestly, I think Brett, it was just our good fortune, our dumb luck. John and Jesse and us between our three time zones, we just couldn't get it to work where they could both chat with us together. And so instead, everybody gets a twofer, right? Essentially a two-part episode where we talked with John, and this evening we share what we discussed with Jesse, and it's on the same book in the same process, but yet they were very different discussions, weren't they?
Yeah, and again, it would have been cool to have them together, but I think we were lucky to have them separate
Yeah, me too.
because
This was pretty neat because they both riffed about their own interests and backgrounds, and we had the time and space for them to do that. And I appreciate that. They were lovely and so interesting and so fun in their own rights. Um and uh I this isn't on the recording that you'll all hear in a moment, but stay tuned because in the next year Dr. Jesse Rogerson will be back on Dice and Mind.
we haven't because we we might have our own um
Never hurts to have an
resident
unofficial,
astronomer,
unofficial resident, yeah,
Dyson
we,
Mind astronomer
yeah,
available.
astrophysicist. It's not going to
Yeah.
hurt, right?
Yes.
For all of
No.
your role-playing needs.
I never thought that I would ever be able to I just, I
Okay,
be able
but
to. be able to say that I've been able to have a really cool conversation with an
You
astrophysicist.
are not
That
giving yourself credit, and I know I'm giving a little bit away from the interview. We'll go there in a moment, but maybe the highlight for me, in retrospect,
oh
is
no.
that no, I say this with for real props, is that you introduced Jesse to Traveller.
Well, we'll see how this turns out. We need to do a follow-up with him in a
Oh
couple
yeah. Oh
weeks
yeah. But
because
just the
it,
fact that you, Brad, are the
yeah.
one who told the astrophysicist, "Oh, I think you'll like Traveler," and he was geeking out.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
Again, he's got two little ones at home. I don't want to necessarily he's obviously a responsible enough gentleman that he won't
Yeah, we don't want his divorce to be on your
no,
hands.
and we know that that won't happen, but he may very well have looked at it and said, "Okay, I need to step away from this because I know that
Yeah.
nothing good could come from it." But on the flip side, um I do need to follow up with him on that just because again, I think you said it. I don't know if you said it during the recording or not, but when the math in some of the books and
Yeah.
everything like
I
that
mean, it's not
would
difficult,
allow
but it's in there.
anyone to
Yeah.
geek out,
Yeah. So I think we should
So
just go.
yeah, I think we should.
Dr. Jesse Rogerson is an assistant professor at York University. He is a passionate scientist, educator, and communicator. Whether in the classroom or on social media, he seeks to create conversations on how science and society intersect and why science is relevant in our daily lives.
As is usual, Jesse, thank you for joining us. We've already conversed for a couple minutes anyway.
Like 15, yeah.
Yeah, so we've already had a great conversation that
Yeah.
you all probably will
Thank you all for listening to
will
the
yeah,
episode.
thank you.
We'll see you in two
You've
weeks.
you've
Yeah.
all missed.
Mhm.
But I have to ask, even before we get into the book, because we've kind of talked about this a little bit, like
Mhm.
you're a scientist, but you're also an educator. Um, if I can ask a rudimentary question, um, how how did you start on this path?
Yeah.
uh,
Ooh.
to get into what drew you down the path of science and studying quasars and how did you get there?
Man, um it's a pathway of privilege that I got to go down this direction. I would say that it's a mix of two things that I ended up in the career that I'm in. I've always been a very social person. So like I've always been um I wanted to work in groups, I wanted to work in teams, I wanted to have fun, I wanted to chat with people. I like talking, I like presenting, I like playing with things. And then I was also super interested in things like not everything, like not all of my schooling was I interested in, but when I got into university and I really started learning about space, I I took astronomy, by the way. I was in computer science. Computer science was my
Okay.
undergrad in first year.
Yeah.
And because I thought it was really fun to tinker with code, and it was just wonderful to play around with code. But then when I got into university, I was like kind of disenchanted with it, and I took astronomy as an elective because I was like, oh, who doesn't like space?
Mhm.
Mars is cool. I remember looking at constellations as a kid and stuff, and I sort of had this love of physics from high school. And then when I got into actually learning about space in first year astronomy, I just couldn't stop. I was like, this is
That's cool.
interesting. I need more. I need more. And so then I switched from computer science into physics proper, and I took the astrophysics stream. And I just kept going. And every year it got cooler and more interesting and more difficult, way more difficult. And so I had to like relearn how to do math to make sure I could do this.
Wow.
And then by the end of my fourth year, I finished a 4 year physics degree. And the simple answer is I was just not done. I wasn't done with it. I didn't feel like I had actually I had read textbooks and I could answer questions on a test enough to get a degree, but I wasn't the one doing the learning.
Mhm.
I was the one who was reading about other people's learning.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need to do grad school because I need to do some of this discovering, whatever that is, right? And so I went to grad school, and that just like catapulted it because in grad school, they're my supervisor, Pat Hall, for both my master's and my PhD. He's just like, okay, what do you want to work on? How do you want to do this? How do we? And he starts. your supervisor starts guiding you on how to ask
Hmm.
questions in science. And that's where it opens, where you start asking your own questions and you sort of fall in love with the scientific process. And that's sort of how I got here. I wanted to learn more, and so I didn't stop. And I got to the end of my PhD, and I had learned some things and discovered some very small little pebbles on the pile of knowledge that we've
Hmm.
all created. Um, and but at that point, I was more interested in the conversations with people about science and what I've learned. I wanted to talk to people about space as much as I wanted to learn about
Yeah,
space.
yeah,
And so then my career went that direction, more into education, specifically public education. I ended up as I worked in museums and science centers across Canada, um, developing programming, developing planetarium shows,
oh, cool.
doing advising on science in various museums as an astronomer. And so I got sort of to mix my interest in the sciences with the socializing with people and sort of creating that intersection. So like for me, becoming a scientist was really like I just wasn't done with the topic. And
Yeah,
I really feel like it was, it's one of those things of privilege that I had. I had a strong support system that I could keep going down a PhD path, which is not a lucrative pathway. And
sorry.
at the time. And I've now been able to, I've ended up in a wonderful position as a professor at York University in
Yeah,
Toronto. And my job there is a teaching stream. I'm a teaching stream professor. So I don't do active research. I do a tiny,
yeah. So,
small
so,
amount.
so
I just,
York's differentiated pathways.
mhm.
How's
We
it
have
go? Yeah, how's it going?
I think that it's fantastic because at a university, especially a massive university, York has 50,000 undergrads. It is a really, really big university. And there it's not just about having the best researchers on the planet, but it's about creating the best curricula on the planet, right? That's what you want to be with a
Yeah,
university that big.
yeah.
And York has some incredible researchers across the campus. I can tell you, like in the astronomy department, some of the top in Canada for sure. But York is also known for it's got a strong engineering program, but it's got a massive like humanities, liberal arts, and professional studies. It's got a great business school, really great
Mhm.
researchers,
Wow.
creating some fantastic knowledge. And so you have all these students there, and to take, I think having people like me there, where I'm in the teaching stream, and my
Hmm.
job is to not just teach, but to be good at teaching. I need to be an excellent educator.
Yeah,
Uh, so I'm looking at what are the best pedagogical ways to deliver knowledge to an undergraduate student. And I can make that my priority, whereas
it's really cool.
the researchers can make the research their priority as well as they can sort
Yeah,
of they do both.
yeah.
I think it's a fantastic mix. I think all universities should have full-time educators as well as full-time researchers. I think they complement each other really nicely.
That's a really cool perspective. That's really nice to hear.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Yeah. The researchers outnumber us. And the point of a university is to create knowledge, to research and do cool science
Mhm.
or write great manuscripts, as well as to teach the next generation. But it's a place of learning. It's a place of higher level learning, and you
Yep.
want to have at least some of your group focusing on that. And man, in my department, my entire department is so I'm not actually in astronomy. I'm in a group called the natural science department, and we're
Oh,
all full-time teaching stream professors.
yeah.
And it's incredible what these people know how to do. Um, like the way they like uh, one of the professors she teaches she's like a botany professor, and she just started this like field course for these undergrads where they go out and they are looking at like native plants in the area. It's something that you wouldn't get normally. There's like I'm getting students using like as much real data as they can, so I'm like trying to get
Oh,
as
cool.
astronomical data into my classroom
Yeah.
and getting students to what I'm really trying to do is trying to get students to think about what they see in media. So when you see astronomical stories and you see titles like, "Hey, Earth-like planet discovered," what are the scientists actually meaning? What does the media actually mean when they say Earth-like planet?
Yeah.
Um, so we get to focus on that kind of stuff. And if you go to like a physics classroom, they'd be focusing on like different types of things, like the equations and like
Yep.
the hard science behind um, the theory they're learning at the time. So yeah, it's a good mix. I really like it.
So it makes sense to me why you might be motivated to write your book
Yes.
with your colleague and partner in crime here. Because
Yes.
it definitely, right, Daydreaming in the Solar System. Just this wonderful book. And obviously, so as this episode drops 2 weeks ago, we talked with John. We talked a lot about the book. We obviously want to talk more about it through your perspective with you. But it is like you were saying, Brad, before we clicked record, it's a very, and I mean this in a really good, fun way. It's a very educational book, right?
Yep.
Like it's nice and thin. I mean, again, I'll reiterate, one of the things I like about MIT Press books is they tend to be concise. You don't have these tomes that come out. They're these tight manuscripts where you're going to kind of go front to back and you're going to pick something up interesting along the way. And I thought yours really moved chapter to chapter. Um, it's
Amazing.
well, but I mean, I'm sure that was the goal. And like we were saying before we clicked record, um, it was impressive. I wonder if you could, because again, we didn't catch this on tape
It's
as it were.
it's it's very approachable whether
Yeah.
you have a science background, whether your background's a business, music, whatever the case
Right.
is,
Yeah.
and you have an interest in, astronomy, space, whatever. It's
Yeah.
approachable. It's something that you can read and you will get something out of it, in my opinion, as someone who
Oh
doesn't have
yeah.
that background.
So like there's a few pieces here to that. Um, so both John and I are just straight up we're interested in talking to the public about space.
Yeah.
Before when John and I met, way back at the beginning of my grad school, I might have been a master's student at the time. He and I were like randomly we would do public talks in various scenarios, like at the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada or something like that. So we've always had this interest in it, and we've like been growing it um, for a very long time. I got into a career where my entire job, like in the museum world, my entire job was to figure out how to take complex things and teach them to non-science people. So when you walk into a museum and you read those panels on the wall about something scientific, the it lands with you, right? I
Hmm.
wanted to create those conversations with the non-science people. And then now my job at York is I teach astronomy and space sciences, but I teach them to non-science majors. And everybody in my courses
Yeah.
are non-science
I
people.
suspected. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So let me tell you how this book, I don't know if John,
No, go
I can't
for it.
remember, but how we got to this book. I was literally working at the museum. This is my old job. I was the Canada Aviation and Space Museum, and I was writing a blog. So I think that I was a blog post for my museum's website.
Yeah.
And so I think that to your point about how like it moves from chapter to chapter,
Hmm.
I think it started in like a blog idea because
Yeah. Okay.
we had
Hmm.
I had this I was like there's a moon um called Europa. You
Hmm.
probably know this moon Europa, right? And or sorry, no, actually, Europa is the one that ended up in the book.
Yeah.
There's a moon called Enceladus.
Yeah. I'm glad you're saying this because I will say I was a little surprised Enceladus wasn't there,
Yes.
but I thought Europa was awesome and it covered it.
Okay, let me tell you. I think I know why Enceladus wasn't there. Okay, so Enceladus, for the listener, is this moon of Saturn. It is an ice moon. It's entirely covered in ice, water ice, H2O, probably 10 to 100 kilometers thick of ice. We don't really know. And then below that, there's a global ocean,
Hmm.
liquid water, H2O, encompassing the whole moon. And it goes around Saturn. And due to gravitational effects and tidal forces and such, it maintains this liquid mantle, you could call it. And when a spacecraft arrived there, Cassini,
Hmm.
it discovered that it has these massive jets that shoot huge plumes of H2O through cracks in the ice, cryovolcanically shooting it out into space. And it creates a ring around, it creates the E ring around Saturn. Um, Incredible discovery made by the people of that mission. And when I was sitting in my office one day and I was like, okay, so I was looking at pictures. I was like, it's got these huge jets shooting water out at who knows how much pressure it's shooting that out of. And I was like, I wonder if I was standing on this moon and I like jumped into the jet,
Yeah.
could it like lift me up? And that was where this started. And so I started like reading papers and like trying to figure out what's the pressure, how do we know, what do we know from the spacecraft? And I did my best as much as I could. And then I emailed John and I was like, John, this is the question I'm trying to answer. I think it'd be a funny blog post. And so we went back and forth in the emails a bit, and he helped me figure out that no, the pressure's not strong enough.
Yep.
You if you jumped into it, you just fall into the crevice. But then we also said,
Disappointing.
okay, I know it was disappointing, but John,
Bummer.
but John made it. And John's fingerprints are all over this book, obviously, as a co-author, where he's like, don't worry, it's still fun because if you made a parachute that was the size, how big was it? A parachute the size of like two hockey rinks or something like that, then it would catch enough of the jet and you would go flying up into space. Right. And so that was the way I ended the blog post. And that got posted on the museum website. And then when we went to write the book,
Yeah.
We sort of drew inspiration. We were like, that was a really fun blog post to do together. We should do more of those.
Yeah.
And so we started putting a book together and we left out Enceladus because it was on the museum
Yeah.
website.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I will say, and then I'll turn over to you, Brad, but I will say I said the same thing to John, but I was so happy to see among others Pluto there. I mean, I have a print. I have I printed at the office at the university the rearward looking scan or image of Pluto. What is it? Right, the mountains, the ice mountains, right at the edge of what's the heart? The something Planitia, whatever. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah,
Sputnik
Sputnik
5. Yeah,
Planitia.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because it's like that's amazing. Like I never thought in our lifetimes we would see the surface of Pluto and that it would be more than a snowball. So like to see
My
that stuff
gosh.
was, yeah, and to see some of that in the book, it was fun, especially, our perspective of the podcast being so oriented on like play and games and lit all through this and trying to bring in science. It it's fun with those kind of images that are real, and then it's fun with books like yours because it gives one more fodder for the imagination, right? A
Yeah.
highly informed imagination.
Yeah, that was Pluto. I think we've, regardless of whether you think it's a planet or not, um, it's an interesting place, and it's so new in in like our understanding. Like 1930 is when it was discovered. That's not that long ago, really. And
Mm.
and it, I always point to Pluto as a wonderful story of science because you can trace back through the last 400, 500 years of like our evolving understanding of what the word planet actually means. And then to finally in to have the spacecraft fly by this place that has been the center of such interesting conversations, and it to be revealed as one of the most complex places in the solar system, I think was just like the cherry on top to the whole conversation. Because you could go to places like Ceres, which is part of the Pluto debate as well,
Right?
the dwarf planet in between Mars and Jupiter. And you could go to Ceres or you could go to Vesta, which is sort of almost part of that conversation. And they're interesting places, but Pluto just like I think shock and awed everybody. You have this incredibly complex active place in a locale in the solar system that you would not expect that to be happening. I don't pretend to know a ton about Pluto, but it's been a great few years going through all the work that has come from New Horizons. Yeah.
What was we asked John this, and I'm curious as to what your experience was like. And this kind of a goofy analogy, but I'll use it. Um, the sausage making, the experience of doing the writing
Oh,
and putting the book together and working with MIT Press
Yeah.
and all of that. Um, what was that like for you doing that?
well, I don't think anybody's asked me that about this book.
Yeah.
It was way more work than I was expecting. MIT Press was fantastic. They are a great group of people to work with. They are they're pros. They set us up with what we needed. They would we had they had deadlines. They helped us hit those deadlines. I don't know. I got nothing bad to say about MIT Press, that's for sure. We I would love to publish with them again. Um, the the actual nitty gritty nuts and bolts of like putting a book together was it was so it was it was constant. I guess the way I would think is you were constantly stepping back and then focusing in, and then stepping back and then focusing in is what it felt like, I guess.
Hmm.
So John and I would have like weekly meetings, and it
Yeah.
sometimes it felt like we did absolutely nothing in those meetings, but we did everything. We would
Hmm.
be like discussing like story arc of the whole book, and like chapter order, and like, wait, what about this detail? And if we talk about this bit of science, how do we like leapfrog it into the next? Like there's bits of
Yeah.
science that sort of follow the way through.
Hmm.
Um, Trying to like thread those lines, thread that needle through all the chapters sometimes. But then so you'd be doing we do this weekly, and then we go away to our separate pieces and crunch, and then I would be so in such in utter details, where I'd be trying to figure out like something about what was one that was when I was talking about. I remember the Venusian atmosphere. I was
I was
trying
thinking that one
so
too.
yeah, because it's such a complicated place, trying to figure out what it would actually be like to be on the Venusian surface or in the Venusian atmosphere higher up.
Mhm.
And like so like I at that point I'm thinking about individual air or atmospheric molecules bouncing off of the person. So I'm like, how fast are they moving? What would that do to the person's skin if there was skin? Or oh, and if you're higher up, okay, the pressure is okay, but now you're in sulfuric acid clouds sometimes, and like, what would that do? And like, you're, it was like it was so much detail on
Mhm.
those times, and then so broad on other times, and it was like this whiplash back and forth from it. Um, and then you'd have to read all these papers and do all this work to try and get like 500 to 2,000 words or something, right? It was way more than I was expecting, but in a great way,
Mhm. Mhm.
because you end up it. I guess it's like it puts a magnifying glass on all the things that you don't know. That's what it
That's cool.
did, right? I was writing this book about the planets, and I'd be like, oh yeah, I know all about Venus's CO2 atmosphere, and it's 90 times thicker than Earth's, and there's sulfuric acid clouds. Great, I teach this in my classes all the time. And then when I'd actually sit down to write it, I'd be like, I need to read 10 papers. Give me a second. And then I'd bring these papers to John and be like, John, does this make sense to you? Like, and he would teach me some stuff, and like we would sort through it. It was a wonderful mess of learning, I would call it.
So that's so cool. I,
Have you had any students? Have you had any students come up to you with regarding the book or anything? Or
Actually, it's funny that you say that. The book came out in October, but literally like the week before it came out, I went on paternity leave. So my wife and I just had a baby in
yeah,
October.
congratulations.
Thank you so much.
yes.
She was born about 6 days after the book came out.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
Wow.
it's kind of cool, right? So book comes out. I'm on pat leave. I have not talked to anybody at in any of my class. I don't have any classes right now, so I haven't had students come to talk to me about it. But I have so much in my brain that I want to do with the book in class.
Yeah.
Um, I perhaps this is self-serving, but um, I think that the book has a perfect way to get to those conversations with non-science people.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm hoping to talk to students in class about it, and maybe even bring it into the programming in class at some point.
I I I mean I think that would be incredible. I know when I was a freshman, it could have been sophomore year. I think I don't it was one of the two. And I was in this it's a long story, but the short version is I was in this like broad
There's no short
I
version
I'm
with
really
him.
trying broad science survey course. It was
Yeah,
it
okay.
was
Yeah.
it was my dad had really pushed like my dad never pushed any of this stuff like never would push for for like you should do X, Y, or Z. But when my brother and I went to college, she was like, look at education as a backup. And I was like,
Okay.
I don't want to do that,
Yeah.
but fine. So for like sophomore year, I took a bunch of ed courses.
Okay.
And one of them was like basically science for the educator, which, like, I was already science bound, but it's like, okay, I'll take this. It knocks out a bunch of requirements of generals, whatever. I didn't learn a great deal in the course. However, the assigned book, one of the assigned books, has had a lifelong influence, and it was either the first or second edition of Robert Hazen's Science Matters. And it was just this incredible over. It's dated now. I know he updated it maybe I don't know how many years ago, but it it just blew my mind. Like it opened my eyes. It was written clearly as like an intro pan science book, and it covered. I mean, it had its limitations, right? It made it in as far as the biological sciences and then put it out, but it was this phenomenally insightful, engaging read where like every chapter was topical and it moved you through the physical and then the biological sciences and it was like the best current knowledge and it was with this right this joie de vivre of science in everything. And I was like, and I could not put it down. And so I think you guys have written something similar, but obviously more focused and way more clever and creative. And with the, I mean, and with the vignettes,
Thank
like,
you.
I think, and like to Brad's point, I think if you can use that in a class, you should.
Well,
Hmm.
I think so what I think that the heart so like if you look at the way the book is structured, right? There's 15 chapters. Each chapter focuses on one place in the solar system, and there's a
Hmm.
story. First, you read a
Yep.
story,
Yeah.
and then you learn about why the story played out the way that it did
Yep.
scientifically. So it's like a mix of science and science fiction.
Hmm.
But I think the word story is the key there,
Hmm.
because I think it depends on the type of learning you're trying to do. Sometimes like if you're getting into something super, I'm trying to think of like me learning quantum mechanics in like fourth year. There's lectures where all we did was just look at an equation and play with an equation. But overall, you need a story. You need to know what the equation fits into. You need to know why. Um, you need to attach importance to
Hmm.
things. You need to attach characters to things,
Hmm.
even if the characters are non-people things like equations. You need to attach all this to a thread. And so in my time working in public education and museums, working in the classroom, or working on social media or anywhere, and it's like the number one thing you're trying to do is tell a story. That's the first thing that you should start with. And then you fit the science in and you fit the thing that you're trying to teach into the story arc. So the the goal for us was to tell stories, and in writing the book, that has sort of morphed how I want to do my education in class, because now it's not like I don't want to just get up and teach a lecture about stars anymore. I want to be like, let's tell the story of stars. You
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
it's not the
Hmm.
same, and it's not the same idea. It's the same learning that happens, but it's
Well, it goes back to Sagan and Droyan's Cosmos, right? Back to the
yes. I
to the
mean,
early
that's
80s. I mean, you tell
huge
the
influence.
story, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all storytelling. That is the only way we learn. No one, not a single, very few people, I should say, sit down and just memorize facts, right? That's just not what we do. Humans are built around stories. It's how we connect with each other. It's how we connect with ourselves. It's what stories you tell the world and what stories you tell yourself that informs who you are and what you learn. So we really wanted to lean into that, right? And we started telling stories. John took the brunt of the storytelling, um, and he is so good at it. He has such a strong knowledge of science fiction. He's read so much science fiction, and he has such a strong knowledge around the science. And we crafted these little vignettes. They're not even really full stories if you really read them, right? You like
Hmm.
there's not like a huge plot going on here. It's just attaching some sort of grounding
Yeah.
to going to a place. And we really wanted someone to be able to feel like it was them there. And the only way to do that is with storytelling.
One of the things I liked about those vignettes was how you were able to keep each of them in the second person really agnostic to the reader, right? Because I mean, that had to have been
Yes.
difficult because, like, Brad
Oh
could have been
man.
reading, I could have been reading, someone who knows nothing about any of this but just was like, ooh, space, right? Could have been
Hmm.
reading, and yet
Yeah.
and yet those vignettes, they, at least I thought, they tended to assume very little. Almost anybody could put themselves in those shoes or boots, as the case may be, and hope and ideally like see themselves in it. You were like, you I thought you two were seemingly very careful about not limiting that.
Yeah, how did that, maybe this is putting you guys on the spot, but how did that land with you reading it? Like, this written in the second person, that is
Hmm.
rare,
Hmm.
right? You read
Hmm.
books. I don't know if I've ever read a book like that before. Like I've seen maybe examples of it. Did that land okay with you? Do you feel like that was as you were
It,
reading it, that it didn't feel too awkward?
no, it didn't feel awkward at all to me.
Oh, that's good. Good to hear.
It, and both he and I read a little bit more fiction than he does. But for the most part, we read a lot of, both of us, most of our reading is
Sci-fi.
nonfiction.
Yeah, well, right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
and but so reading something like that, it to be honest with you, the way you wrote it, it put it, for whatever reason, Jason, tell me if I'm wrong, it made it easy for
Yeah.
us to fall into those shoes.
Oh,
Good.
yeah.
You
Like
know,
that
and
that is
I think
exactly what we're going for.
Yeah.
and I think my 18-year-old daughter could read it and she
Yeah.
could fall into those shoes. I think
Hmm.
it's very agnostic that way.
Hmm.
And I think we
Hmm.
we even mentioned this with when we were talking with John. I think you could even have someone in middle school read this and it could spur interest with them, um, if they wanted to dive and do, you know, and it could be one of those things that, and again, I mean, obviously, it could be one of those things that could be like an inflection point down the road for them where they read this and they're like, oh, maybe this is, an
Hmm.
area that I want to
Yeah.
investigate further down the road.
Yeah.
Well, so I have hundreds of students every year, and and my view of my classroom when I look out to a lecture hall of 250 students is not a single one of them is alike to the other, right? Like
Hmm.
everybody is
Yeah.
so interesting and unique and different. And when we were, I remember John and I talking about this at one of our like big meetings where we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? And we knew we wanted to write stories and we knew we wanted to have like quote unquote like astronauts being the characters there. And then I was like, I remember us talking and being like, okay, well, like we can't just have them be all men and they can't just be all white. And like, but that it led us down a road where we were very uncomfortable because we were, how do I, a white male, cisgender,
Hmm.
like I'm, how do I write a character that is female? Or how do I write a character that is bisexual? Or how do I write a character that is any other thing that isn't me, right?
Hmm.
Um, so, and it would be disingenuous, right?
Hmm.
And I would be scared of like doing harm, and I
Hmm.
didn't want to do harm, and neither did John.
Hmm.
And so we were like, how do we pick a gamut of characters? We have 15 chapters we're going to write. How do we pick a gamut of characters that well represents everybody? And we I think when you read it, you say, we did a really good job of making sure that it didn't rely on anyone. And I think that
Hmm.
is because we felt way more comfortable having no details. um, because we really wanted, and we have a whole like manifesto in the back. I don't know. Did you guys see the manifesto in the back of why we wrote it the way we did? Is there's so much, there are so many roadblocks to so many communities to get
Hmm.
into science, or not just to get into science, but just to get into science fiction, to go to Comic
Yeah.
Cons,
Yeah.
to
Hmm.
be part of gaming communities, to be
Hmm.
part of anything. There's so many roadblocks, and we wanted someone to be able to pick up our book and not feel like it was a roadblock or not feel like they were on the outside of it. that they were part of it, and they could just read it and they'd be like, "Yep, I get it. That's me. That's me there. That's me walking around on Mars. That's me flying through the atmosphere of Titan. That's me on a comet for a year." Um, we did our best, and don't get me wrong, there's still biases there because we are two white men that wrote this. But I think we really were trying to not be so like pigeonholing,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
So that's why the second person came about, and we really tried to keep it as open as possible.
Yeah. Very cool.
Oh,
Okay, so
I would hope that just by the nature that you made that attempt, that puts you ahead of
oh yeah. Yeah.
Hopefully, right?
a lot of other folks. Let's be honest, especially
Well,
You're,
these days.
whenever you create something, as you guys know, you're taking chances, right?
mhm.
And we took we think that this was the right way to go. And hopefully, as we haven't, we've I feel like I'm inviting it. We haven't gotten bad feedback on that second person thing yet, but hopefully we don't.
I don't think you're going to.
Yeah,
I
right.
really don't.
I
Yeah.
don't think, it's society, especially I think Western society right now is so invested in defining people. And the second person perspective, the way you wrote it, invites people to define themselves and then see themselves in those situations. And we could all be doing a better job with that.
I've never thought about it like that. That was such a great way of saying that. Invites people to define themselves, which is sort of like the lifelong goal, right?
Right.
Of anybody.
Hmm.
Right.
How do you define yourself?
Yeah.
Go define yourself and feel and be and make sure it's okay for you to redefine yourself.
Right, right. Now,
Uh,
the natural segue would now be to get into a 35-minute conversation on Star Trek. But instead,
Well,
in
I want to ask
yeah,
because
you know where
we
I'm
want
going
to
here.
we want
Yeah,
to be
okay.
cognizant because you're an hour ahead,
Yeah.
and
But
we want to be
but
cognizant
we
because you
do
do
want
have a
to I
you
was gonna
do
say, yeah, you got a little one, but we do
yeah.
want to ask like what instead of Star Trek, what do you do, Jesse? I'm not going to I'm not going to ask in your free time because then we'd all just start laughing. But what do you do when you can just to geek out?
Well, I was going to ask even before that because
Oh,
you have a little one at home. Are
yeah.
you actually getting sleep now?
well, you know what? We have two little ones.
Okay.
We have a 3-year-old
Oh,
Okay.
and then we have a 3-month-old.
so then no.
Yeah.
And so the sleep is non-existent.
No.
Okay.
Um, um, but, you know, my science, so Star Trek, The Next Generation and Voyager were my two favorites. I wouldn't say that I'm a massive fan of them. Like I don't rewatch them over and over and over
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
but they were really, really good shows. Um, the gosh, what do I do? I think I can't even remember what free time was like. If
Yeah, we get it.
We
um,
understand.
I, I think I think what I like to do is I don't think I have like a singular passion.
Yeah.
Um, I just actually just the other day, speaking of having recent free time, I just played this one with my buddy just
Epic
the other day.
tactics.
Epic Tactics. It's a little
Yeah.
small it's a little game, role-playing game, and you just it's a strategy game and you're just fighting each other. You have certain moods, you roll dice and stuff.
Oh,
So
interesting.
like I think what I like to do is I think I like to bounce around. So if you know, like what kind of like I'll go to a Comic-Con once in a while, but not every year. But I'll play like um a board game like that once in a while. I like social games. I like games where you're like you don't have to think too hard. Um most of the time. And then but then this one is one where you have to like really sit and it's like, okay, what moves do I want to do 10 moves from now?
Mm,
Um,
interesting.
so I I don't think I have like I think I like to experience a lot of different things. And so
Yeah.
I play around with a lot of different games and a lot of different um science fiction and a lot of different media
Yeah.
when I had free time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
that hasn't been in a while.
we can both speak from experience. It will return.
Yes.
Not necessarily this decade, but it will return.
One day I will be able to nerd out again.
Yes.
Hmm.
And what is on I don't even know what's on. I have like a pile of books and stuff that I want to read and games that I want to play. I have Boss Monster. Have you ever played that game?
I've heard of
It's
it,
a
yes, but
yeah, it's a like a quick uh deck building game, I think is what it
Oh,
is.
okay.
yeah, it has
Um,
kind of like a Mario-esque type of
yeah,
vibe. Yes,
yeah,
I've
Interesting.
that's a
seen
fun
it.
one. I played it a few times. I
Jason, you know what I'm
really
going to recommend if you want to like this is one where you take a look at it, put it on your back burner for down the road.
yeah.
If you've never looked at it before, have you ever heard of Traveler?
No, never heard of
Oh,
it.
okay, hold on. Hold on.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
haven't played yet, but Traveler is okay. Speaking of quasars, I have to come back to that.
Okay, bring it on.
So Traveler is a black hole of details and adventure and like in some of the books, like the math even starts to go high level. So like you have to, it's really cool. Brad's got me into this, but just be careful, Jesse, because you'll get sucked in and then it'll be like, where did Dad go?
Yeah.
The Traveler role-playing game
Traveler from
Yeah.
Mongoose. Yeah.
Yeah.
from 1977.
Well,
Yeah. But
but
Mongoose,
very yeah
yeah,
updated now.
Mongoose Publishing is based out of the UK, and they've come out with a new version over the past, 10, 15 years. And it's phenomenal. The original version that came out in 77, they've just acquired the rights to it. So they're going to be the caretakers of it now.
Oh, nice.
And it is um, you know,
It's a really cool
the
company too, Mongoose. Like it'll be worth looking at their background. I think it'd probably resonate based on some of the things you said.
Okay,
yeah,
all
Um,
right, great.
yeah,
I will take that because it's one of those things like I love games. Games are, I think I love them mostly for the socialness of it, where you get to like
nice.
get together with your friends and play,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But they're, stepping into those worlds, like it's so much fun stepping into another world, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure you guys know this. Um, whether like Lord of the Rings is probably my favorite books of all time.
It's incredible.
They're so good, those books. And Kim Stanley Robinson wrote the Mars trilogy, which I think
Mhm.
John and I
I'm gonna
took a
just
lot
show
of.
this
Oh,
for
what is this?
this is
Brad,
the
so Brad is showing a map from Traveler. It's
Oh,
this is the traveler map of the universe,
just
and this shows the galaxy of which our galaxy. Now it's gonna take
it's
forever to load. And that's
it's
how much of the
oh,
galaxy has been mapped
just Jesse,
within the
just
traveler.
be
oh my
careful
gosh.
before your kids go to school.
Yeah. So that gives you an idea
That's
of
gorgeous.
that's
Is
the Milky
this?
Way.
It is the Milky Way, so it takes place in the Milky Way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's designed where you can actually take it anywhere. So I'm going to leave it there. You
Oh my
can,
gosh.
yeah.
That's even an
So
up-to-date image. It's got the barred tight spiral
Uh-huh.
galaxy. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Oh
That's
wow.
charted space. That's all of where
That's
all of the material exists right
Oh, see,
now.
this opens up such interesting questions about like the whole like the whole
You've
idea
heard it
of
here first, man. This is the day one of his addiction right here.
Don't play this until after tenure.
Yeah, and I would recommend you probably, this is good probably if you have to rock your little one, you could do some reading,
Yes,
Oh
and
yeah,
that
that
that's
I
type of
can
smart.
thing
do.
for right
That's good.
now.
Yeah.
But probably this is probably something you probably won't play until the youngest starts their first
Job.
full
Oh.
day. Yeah, job probably, but at least their first full day schooling.
Yes.
So
So
that's a what like I think I'm still like 2, 3 years away from that.
Yeah.
yeah, it might
Okay.
be. That might be the
Yeah.
case. Jason and I, just because
We
of
haven't played yet.
we
It's
haven't
we're
played,
not there
but
yet. It's too much of a yeah, we've
and
got other stuff on the yeah.
I'll send you a picture of the bookshelf that I have of the books.
It's an amazing amount of stuff they could, yeah.
So
Yeah.
But
wait,
you
he's
were
got
you
books too.
Oh, it's a
oh
book.
well no
It's a
there are
series.
tons of RPG but are there novels?
There very few yet.
Okay.
Very few
Jesse,
yet.
you
Okay.
were gonna say something.
Yeah, we'll talk about this in
Oh,
another way,
well,
but
you're showing this picture of like
yeah.
uncharted space,
Yeah.
and
yeah.
like it gets like these interesting questions of like, are we alone in the universe?
Yeah.
And if there are alien species out there, like or species like as intelligent as we are
Yep.
out there, and there's no reason why there shouldn't be, but
Yep.
maybe there aren't. Who knows,
Mhm.
right? How long would it take for an intelligent species to colonize a galaxy, or if if um if an intelligent species wanted to, what type of time frames are we looking at here, and should we have seen the attempts of colonization of a galaxy or not by now? And so that's when you show me that picture and I see like that little piece of the Milky Way has been charted in that
It's a
game.
really good question.
Then you start asking, okay, well, like, how long would it take? And I
Uh,
have, all these questions about what's that called? The paradox. I forget the name of the
oh, and
paradox.
Fermi's paradox.
Yeah, Fermi's paradox.
Yeah,
We're like, why haven't we heard from anybody yet? Uh,
oh man, but the question of that's such a good question, Jesse. I apologize. I can see the cover from my high school library. So I'm like, this is I think this came out like late 80s, early 90s. Like this is old now. It's a silver cover and it was don't it was something like I can't remember the author. It was something like the Millennium Project. I don't remember, but this was coming out like when Kurzweil was coming out with his big stuff. Like it was a lot of futurism thinking. Anyways, I bring this up because I remember skimming through this and whoever it was took on this question of how long would it take us if we were the only ones, for example, to colonize the galaxy? And it was something ridiculously brief, like a million years, like with subluminal speeds, like in just kind of that. I mean, big for a species, but like in a million years, like you could stretch all the way. I mean,
yeah.
I'm sure there were a lot of assumptions, and I mean, so little was known, but still,
So there's a paper came out, or I don't know if it was a paper. A group of people came out with some calculations on this in the last like 5 years. And I wish I had it off the top of my head. And it was just asking those exact same questions. And they based it around like um, the idea of like if you were to send a robotic spacecraft to a place that had the ability to like regenerate itself or recreate itself. So like imagine like shooting something off to the
yep,
next star system and then it lands on a planet and it makes new spacecraft,
yep,
and then they go proliferating out into the galaxy. Yeah, you could do the whole thing in like the whole galaxy in like a million years or something like that. Very short order on the scale
yeah,
of
of a
the
galaxy,
universe,
yeah, yeah,
right? And then if that is the case, if that's possible, then probably it should have happened by now. And then wouldn't then they have been here and wouldn't we have seen that? But I think we forget. I think the reason I'm thinking about this is because you showed me that picture, Brad. You showed me the picture and you showed me a small little piece, and I'm like, even with all those calculations and even with them saying, "Oh yeah, it's just a million years and it could happen." I don't know. I think that the space is so big and the distances are so large and the time frames are so long. Like even if someone, even if there was a group that was trying to colonize, that could easily just die out. And then they made it like just as far as that map was, that charted map. They made it that far and they're like, nah, we're done. Or something happens and it just stops. And like and that's just one galaxy.
mm.
The universe, the Milky Way is so big. There's hundreds of billions of stars. There's the idea that it would get colonized so quickly, I think is technically possible, but I don't know, like with it being so big, I just don't know if it would actually happen.
Yeah, it's
And
it's one thing to say like maybe there was a single artifact left on a planet. It's another thing to
ah,
say like there are McDonald's all the way along the route, right? I mean yeah, I think you bring up a really okay. I'm gonna have to. I think I know the paper you're talking about. I've got to find that because now I want to read that.
yeah, it
This
came
is a
out
fascinating
I
idea.
think we have another reason for you to come back because now we're going to have a whole episode to talk about. Just
just
to
start.
rant,
We'll just
just
all
to
read the paper,
yeah,
and
we'll just
then
talk about this
Oh no, no,
because
we want to talk to you after you've started reading Traveler.
yeah. So we'll
we
have
come
you back
back.
next week.
Right.
Yes,
No, yeah,
Yeah. Oh my God.
and I will have
but
not actually slept at all,
yeah,
Oh.
and 2 weeks straight
yeah,
reading
yeah,
about Traveler.
yeah. This, yeah, you
Just
may
be
find it
careful.
interesting. You
Yeah.
may look
Same
at it
thing.
and go, this is kind of like too adjacent
Yeah. Yeah.
some of the stuff I work with, and maybe this isn't my thing. It may be one way or the other,
Yep,
but it
I'll
is,
check it out. Yeah.
yeah, it's worth checking out just because
It is.
it's very cool with what they've been able to do over the years. So, but hey, we have kept you up
It's so
late.
late by you. God.
Yeah.
What is
And
it? No, what was
Because
that
isn't
here?
it 11 by you?
No, no, it's 9 for me.
oh, you're an
I'm
hour
in
behind.
I'm Mountain Time.
Oh,
Oh, wait.
Jason.
I
You
thought
guys
you
are
were
the
an
late
hour
ones.
ahead.
You've been telling me that
I was
he's
sure you were. Oh, wait, where are you, Jesse?
Calgary.
Calgary. Why would I
Yes.
kept thinking you were, what? Wait, where's
you've
John?
been thinking you've been thinking that because
John's,
he teaches York, he's on Toronto time.
Yeah. Toronto time is it would be 11. Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah.
I'm in Calgary right now.
Oh, well, I feel much less guilty. Good. That's
I'm
good.
doing yeah, I'm
Okay.
doing my pat leave away from Toronto.
Oh, good for you. I was
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out before we logged on, like, what a nice guy. He's willing to stay up so late. I could never have done that at that point in parenting. I wouldn't have even been functional.
Oh man, the yeah, kids are wonderful, wonderful, amazing little Tasmanian devils, and the little phase only lasts so long, but man, they're little basket cases, aren't they? And we have two girls, and the
Mhm.
3-year-old is like being a 3-year-old, and the 3-month-old is being a 3-month-old,
Yeah.
and it's tiring and it's amazing all at the same time, It's
Well,
you guys.
my girls are 17 and 19. One's a junior in high school, one's a freshman in college.
Oh my gosh.
And I will say, and Brad's are even older. And I will say, I'm very strongly biased in favor of having girls. But um uh I will say, and I really mean this, I have found absolutely every developmental stage to be even more fun than the last one.
That's what it's really felt
So,
like.
yeah,
Every month or year,
yeah,
Charlie is our oldest, and right now she's like so cool. And then, but she was so cool like 2 months ago.
Mhm.
Uh, so yeah, she's and she, we had a whole phase with planets, so like I was loving that, right? She's a little off of it right now, but we got all these space books and we have planet stuffies and stuff, and she had like them all memorized, and like their brains are so
Yeah,
absorbent and they're just pulling stuff in, and they're like I used to talk about this when I used to work at museums. Like kids aren't born scientists, right? They're little scientists
yeah, 100%.
that all they want to do
Yeah.
is just play and learn. And
Yeah,
that's just what science is, except
yeah,
when you get into the world of science, it's super rigorous,
yeah,
right?
right.
Where there's rules and you got to follow them. But it's just playing, right? It's just playing with things.
Yeah,
But kids, they're doing that just naturally. And you could see her just like trial and erroring things and
yeah,
making connections. And it's a fun reminder of like all the little that play and story are like
yeah,
central. Then when you're 3 and when you're 30 or 40 or 50, right? It play is like playing and stories
yeah.
is like central to it's like the human condition. It's like
So like 10 years from now, we can hear his daughter like, but Dad, I don't want to read your book.
I know. Like this I it must be done. Come on, kid.
Jason's translating because he has a book and his daughters are
I
saying that to him right now.
Oh, they're never
So
going to read anything I write, and I wouldn't expect it.
It's a point of opposition. They will deliberately say no, even if they're interested in it.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. Jesse, thank you so much for taking time with us. It's really been a pleasure.
You're welcome. This is thanks so much for the interest in the book. I would
Oh
talk
yeah.
about it forever. So thanks for having me on. It was a great combo.
Jesse, thanks for joining us. Hopefully that any traveler discussion doesn't cause you any problems at home.
Yeah.
Um, I have to say I haven't mentioned this to you since we talked with him. Um, Not working in academia. I found the brief discussion you had about um, full-time educator, full-time researcher, and all that they have up at York
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and
That's
all of
not
that.
cool.
That's cool. I found that interesting to me, um, and how it allows teachers to focus on teaching and
Yeah.
finding the best ways to teach
At a
at a
major research
major
university. Right.
research
Right.
university. And to me, that's just absolutely Jesse, I'm glad that you were discuss that with us because I find that absolutely fascinating. I would love to see hopefully someday something like that permeate here in the States. I know it's probably not in the cards at any
It's well,
time.
I mean,
Is it?
it is. It
Is
originated
it?
here,
Oh, did it?
but it did, but it has been very slow to gain traction.
Okay.
For a number of reasons, some quite prudent.
Yeah.
I was unaware of it though, totally unaware of it at York, and so it's just I agree with you. It was really interesting
I'm
hearing about that.
and to me that's my first time hearing anything
Yeah.
about it. So I don't know, I don't know the story behind a lot of it, but it's just to me that it's an interesting topic for me
Yeah.
being someone who isn't in teaching
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
isn't in research and isn't in education.
Right.
Um, but let's head over and have a seat in the Loon Cafe.
Yeah.
What has been on your desk or um, in your hands in terms of reading or
So,
writing or
or in
whatnot?
on my speakers, primarily in my
Oh,
car, but sometimes in my ears. So,
I know where
you
you're
know where I'm going
going.
with this. Michael Dismuke, friend of the podcast, thank
Mhm.
you for the recommendation. Using the free monthly download through Audible. I'm not an audiobook person. Um, I've been listening to an audiobook. Now, I've only ever listened to two audiobooks beforehand. One of them was actually I can tell you here. What the first one was Star Trek Strange New Worlds: The High Country by John Jackson Miller. It was like I think it was the first Strange New Worlds novel to come out, sanctioned novel, and I listened to that in the car on the way to see you guys my last Milwaukee visit and
Okay.
finish it on the way back. So that puts it,
Was that the Shatner visit?
yes, yes, right.
Oh,
So
it
what,
was a
2 years
full-on
ago now?
that was a full-on Trek
That
visit
was a
then.
full-on Trek visit, yes. And then I also listened for fun because I thought it would be just interesting. I've read all of the uh Shakespearean adaptations of Star Wars by Ian Desher, but I've read them all. They're all on my shelf or will be once the remodel's done. But I thought that would be fun and short to listen to. I wonder what they do on audiobook, and it's hilarious. It's like British, old-time British radio. It's so good. But anyways, I wanted to try something new, and Michael had recommended it, and I've really enjoyed it. So as we're recording, it's about 12 and a half hours. I've got about two and a half left.
Okay.
I'm listening to, I'm audio reading A Stitch in Time by Andrew Robinson, who
I love him
played
as an actor,
he
and
and he's wonderful as a voice.
is he?
He is. He narrates his book, which he wrote for the uninitiated. You should stop listening now. Just kidding. He played Garrick on DS9, on Star Trek DS9.
Oh, phenomenal
And
character
so,
too.
this novel, phenomenal. This novel is essentially a character study of Garrick, and it's so plausible. And we know so little about Cardassia, and both pre and post Dominion War. And so the novel is essentially written as a missive to Dr. Julian Bashir, but it's interspersed. The majority of chapters are him simply recollecting his childhood, his adolescence, his young adulthood, on Cardassia, elsewhere on DS9, and it's this really interesting, well-written story that is not glib at all. I was just thinking actually on the way home from the office this afternoon, listening to it, the story got really complex. Like this is legitimate literature, and it's not something normally I would read, or in this case listen to, but it's so interesting. I did, to conclude, I tried to find a printed copy because you know my deal. So anything I've listened to, like if I listen to it or if I've read it on a digital, I buy the book. Otherwise, it just doesn't
Yeah.
feel right to me. I can't do that with this unless I'm willing to pay something like $140 and up because it has become such a collector's item.
Wow.
I know, I had no idea. So, anyways, that's what's been on my table, so to speak. I am nearly done listening to the audiobook of Robinson's A Stitch in Time, which is a Star Trek Deep Space Nine story. I really recommend it if you are at all interested in Cardassia or Cardassian anything, if you enjoy, as we do very much, the character, if you want a bit of Trek, if you simply want a really interesting book, this is it. So, yeah, Michael, thank you for the recommendation.
I can't say. See, I've pondered doing it on the Kindle. Now reading um my reading time has been limited
Yep.
because
Well,
you
this
know,
is
I
almost entirely in the car. This is
yeah.
like
And
80,
well,
80% or more has been on commutes.
and you have a different type of commute. I started a new position as of the time we record this, it's been 3 weeks. My commute
Yeah.
on average is about 20 to 30 minutes.
And mine is barely 20.
Oh, see,
So
then
I've
then
I've been chipping away. I've been
then maybe
chipping
maybe I
away.
should just do the
Yeah.
same thing because
Yeah.
because if it's only 20 minutes, it can't hurt. Um and I listen to music, but
Hmm.
um you know
Yeah.
I haven't done I don't do talk radio. The last
No.
time I commuted regularly to work was about 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Wow,
Um
Brad.
yeah. Um and so I have to get used to things again. And the last time I commuted and that was a commute out to the suburbs. The
Right.
last time I commuted into the city
Oh yeah, man.
was 25 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So it's a different, so I'm still learning routes and everything like that. Um, I think I did mention before, Brandon Sanderson. I picked up.
Have you started reading?
I have not, just because
You've been so
now
busy.
that I'm on my third week, I have
Mhm.
found I'm starting to get my equilibrium
Yeah.
in terms of what I'm going to do about eating and
Yeah,
lunch
because your plan was to read these during your lunch breaks where you could just kind of tune out, relax.
yes.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I found areas where I can sit. Um, there's actually there's actually a couple like conference type rooms that are like
Mm,
um rooms where you can go and kind of like relax in.
nice.
So I think I won't be able, well, we're wrapping up this week. I won't be able to do it this week, but I'm thinking middle of next week I'm going to start doing that.
Good for you.
Um, I've picked up some like microwave type meals that I can do that.
Right.
Because I
They're probably Hot Pockets, aren't they?
no, good grief, no.
Oh,
Um,
in the news today, man dies at work.
yeah, yeah. Hot Pockets. Um,
Thanks for
that
that.
was what was that?
We
That
were
was a
all hearing
Jim
it because
Jim
good is
Gaff.
bad and bad is cool.
Yeah, Jim Gaffigan has a really bad hot, or really good but bad Hot Pockets.
Yes. I'm guessing that
Thing.
would get the explicit rating on Apple
Oh
Podcasts.
yeah, yeah, really really bad. Um, but those are in. But I've had to for probably the past month and a half because of prep for new job and starting
Yeah.
new job. I've had to kind of table the RPG stuff, but
Yep. Yep.
um, I have, much to my wife's chagrin, a stack
Uh-oh.
of Warhammer role-playing books that
That have been
I have.
waiting for you for a while.
Yeah, and um, I haven't looked at those yet. But you and I were texting just I think it was yesterday, or was it the
Yeah.
day
About
before?
Mindjammer?
Mindjammer.
Yeah. Yeah. Yesterday.
Yeah, and about
Oh, maybe that
um,
was 2 days ago. Whatever. Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
and the idea of maybe getting back into things. And I even thought um about opening up GURPS again.
Yeah.
And um
Good, because I bought that book so that we can play.
yeah, and because I'm feeling a little bit of, I feel a hankering for some world building and continuing it,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I have some notes on some of the forks in the adventure that I want to have available.
Okay, so
Um,
let's talk about this for a sec, because you and I haven't talked about the GURPS plan in quite some time. Not
yeah.
since not since
Oh,
before you
before the
landed this
holidays,
position.
probably.
Oh, you're right. Oh
It
man.
probably since before Thanksgiving, probably October, November, early November. We haven't talked about it much.
Yeah, oh my God, maybe. So okay, so remind me, are because you're gonna GM this, are you Is it going to be high fantasy?
Okay, so here's I'll give you a teaser. Um, you can play you can create a character. I want your character to be um current age.
Okay.
Um, so um
Wait, my current age or this t period of
current
history?
current age
Okay.
history.
Okay. Ah, okay.
I am going
That's
to allow
right.
you to roll for some psionics because I know you love that
Oh,
type of
I do. I do.
I love that.
Scion
That is
robots.
that is in lieu of magic.
I like
Um
it. Okay. Okay.
so um as to the era of what it's going to be, whether it's going to be high fantasy,
Mhm.
sci-fi, um, low fantasy, dark and
Okay.
perilous, the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
So, that's the only answer I'm going to be able to give
You're
you.
not going to pull a Cthulhu on me, are you?
In what term? What do you mean by
Well,
that? Are you
like
going
this
to?
isn't going to be Lovecraftian.
I don't think either one of us are
Okay.
really
I
Lovecraftian
don't either.
types.
No. No.
To be not to give. I don't want to give too much away, but
No, no.
I haven't, I haven't dug into anything Lovecraftian
Okay.
in this.
Okay. Well, I
There
am
really isn't any
intrigued.
source. There isn't any really GURPS source material that's truly Lovecraftian, because
Interesting.
they don't have any license for it. Um,
Mm.
so
Okay. Okay.
I haven't pulled up any. There's nothing with a lot of tentacles that I've gotten
Fair
um,
enough. Yeah.
involved in it. But I will say that um, you'll um, you'll be on, you know, you'll
I love watching you trying to dance around what you've already thought through without giving any of it away.
yeah, you'll not you'll um
You'll be where
you're
you
gonna be
are.
on your toes,
Okay.
and just
Okay.
when you think you know where you are, you won't be.
Story of my life. Okay.
Um
I know how to play
and
that.
and and ultimately it's written in a way where episode by episode, if we have guests that want to join us,
Hmm.
um we can have them do that. So
Interesting.
if a Brian or an Aaron or your brother or someone else wishes to jump in,
Okay.
we can
Intriguing.
do that. And if we don't, we don't. But I had read a lot of material prior to the holiday on duet gaming and GURPS, and it's not uncommon. It's a game that's been around forever, obviously. Um, so um, you know, ultimately,
Man, you
what
were
a
dancing around this.
no, what I can tell, I'll this will give it away a little bit. What appealed to me about GURPS is ultimately, it's a generic universal role-playing system,
Yep.
right? Um, the universes in which you can play are infinite.
Yep. Anything.
So
Intriguing. Okay. Well, you heard it here first. I'm not sure what we just heard, everybody, but we heard it here
yeah,
first.
that gave you nothing away other than the fact that my thinking is you it sounds to me like with there's another project that you and I are working on. Um,
And
we might have some activities in March that we are going to attend.
yeah, when we're
Um,
at the point that it's more appropriate to say anything, then and that might be a while, then
yeah,
we'll talk about it.
I think that being the case,
Yeah.
my thinking is that maybe you and I could have a session zero for GURPS later in March,
Perfect. Yeah,
or maybe
perfect.
early April, depending upon the timeline with that.
That sounds very good.
Seems like that seems far out, but just by the
Yeah.
way timelines go,
Look, it's
things
already
things move fast.
given that this episode drops in early March,
Well, that's what,
I think that's but I mean,
you know.
we're recording this a bit in advance and it's still that's just how it's going to be.
I mean,
That's yeah.
I can't believe that we're already this far into 2025 already.
I know. I know.
You
Turn
know.
on the news. It'll be even less believable.
No.
Yeah.
There's nothing
No.
on the news to me that, to be
Ugh.
honest with you,
Yeah.
everything on the news is believable yet unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievably believable,
It
but we'll leave it
is.
at that.
On that note, speaking of unbelievably believable, Next week, everybody, next episode, a couple weeks from now, we're going to have a returning guest on the show, but they will be talking about something really new, really different. You could say pretty marvelous.
As
The
Fernando Lamas used to say, it's marvelous.
Exactly, thank you. In April, believe it or not, everyone, Dyson Mind hits its fourth year. Or its 4-year anniversary, I should say. I guess we're in year four. I don't know how that's happened. Brad and I have been talking about this. I guess it's mostly just been me talking to myself about this, Brad, and I need to talk more about this. But um, we've agreed we're going to spend that episode looking
Live
back.
video,
No
green
video.
screen, green
Nope.
screen.
Brad in cosplay.
Yeah.
Nope, that'll get us pulled off the air. We're going to
Yep.
spend that episode in April looking back on the first 4 years and kind of taking stock. We did this a little bit for our third anniversary. This one's going to be more intentional. Um, I have thoughts. We'll talk about it. But 4 years, I think, given that we questioned would this podcast even go for more than 6 months, and that was when we were doing monthly episodes.
On a very special episode of Blossom.
Exactly. So, we're gonna have lots to talk about, and because we have lots to think about as we round out year four and then look to the future, which is just sort of remarkable. We hope you will all be there with us. In the meantime, you know the deal, as either spring or autumn, depending on where you live, is on its way. Be well, stay well. We will see you in a couple of weeks.